Farness. This is why we do not guess passwords, sir. Because then you get locked out of the Chimera, and then you're just SOL. I told you not to guess it. Guys, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Trey, and today, guys, we're going to be jumping back into some more Star Wars versus Warhammers. So, guys, tell me what you think. Are we going to go back to the Battle of Axum? Or are we going to see the Republic finally wiping the floor with the Imperium? Or, big or, is the Imperium finally going to pull out all the stops and lay the smackdown on the Republic? I don't know, but we might find out today on episode 14. So without further ado, you guys, let's go ahead and jump into it. Episode 14, are you ready? Let's go.
He was on his 9th attempt, and things inside the besieged Chimera had gone from bad to much, much worse. No matter what sequence Farness could think of, no matter what code the guardsmen contrived, nothing was working. And was it any wonder? Farness didn't know so much as how many numbers the code required, the input panel accepting as many digits as he typed into it, leaving him without any reference to how long the sequence of numbers should even be. And while he sat there, guessing for their lives, his squad was running out of time. The vehicle rocked as the toy soldiers outside began hitting back in a big way, and if not for Gala's almost precognitive skill inside the heavy bolter turret, it was all but a given that the Chimera would have already been reduced to cinders and searing steel. "Oh, please, Holy Emperor of Mankind, please guide my hand!" he prayed as he closed his eyes.
All right, so we're back with Farness and the boys in the Chimera, and Farness is over here guessing a password. Is it gonna be like an iPhone where you put the password in wrong too many times, you break it, disable it? I really hope not for their sakes, because they're gonna have their work cut out for them, to say the least.
Dialing random numbers into the pad, and then biting his lips such that it bled, jabbing the enter key. This time, the same rejection notice that had presented itself each instance before did not appear, and a new message took its place. Farness felt lightheaded, hands tingling as he grasped the wheel before him and made sure his feet were against the correct pedals, waiting for the controls to unlock as his eyes focused on the new message.
By the laws of logic, this Chimera platform is declared locked and is hereby inaccessible until such a time as the proper rights of security.
That's Farness. This is why we do not guess passwords, sir. Because then you get locked out of the Chimera, and then you're just SOL. I told you not to guess it. Guys, what are they going to do now? Do they have a D-card droid with them? Do they have a what is R2-D2 considered? Do they have one of him with them? Can he unlock it? Let's see what happens.
Set may be preformed. Turn thyself in for punishment. Thy mind is unworthy of thine access.
The young guardsman felt all the blood drain out of his face, his grip slackening around the wheel of the vehicle. He reached out with a numb hand, pressing a cold finger against the steel keys of the input pad. There was no response.
Yeah, it's not gonna work now, sir.
Using legs that felt utterly devoid of strength, he pressed against the pedals and found them locked. So
Dead.
First, he simply went limp, slumping into his seat and wishing he could will himself to die right there and then and spare the replicae the shots they'd use. But then a rage filled him, a defiance, a denial of the hand dealt to him. He gripped the wheel before him and grit his teeth, raising his heavy booted foot up from the pedals and aiming it at the display. "Thrown damned piece of treacherous!" He started to yell, spittle flying from his lips, when suddenly something happened that stopped not only him, but froze everyone in the vehicle, with the exception of Gala, who was far too enthralled in her bloody work to notice the change. The back door, the one that had been locked before, suddenly chimed and swung down and open. The sound and smell of the battle outside flooded the cabin of the APC, and in with it came a willowy, ethereal figure dressed in red robes. Regin screamed, falling away from the wall-mounted lasgun he had been manning, and, drawing a pistol, riddling the figure with lances of red light. 8 shots passed into and through the figure in red before Janice, who had been standing over Regin, had the good sense to kick his comrade in the face, knocking him out cold. The red-robed figure moved forward without pause or hesitance, even as it was struck by the lethal rays of light. The robe burned and smoldered, and then fell away completely, revealing that it was not a robe at all, but a portion of a Mechanicus banner. And the figure in question was barely that at all, no more than a floating head, or more accurately, a servo skull. The skull hovered between the stunned guards.
I'm confused, guys. Did somebody send this servitor skull on purpose, or did he just happen to be passing by the Chimera and just decided to pop on in? But, biggest but, do we think that he can unlock Farnus's mistake? Can he get the Chimera to work? Because, you know, we saw with the 1313, the tech priestess was able to fiddle with her little servitor and got him to turn into a satellite and knocked out communication. So I wonder if this one might be able to get the Chimera to come back on. That would be a turn of fortune for the guys. Yeah, turn of fortune. Let's see.
The stunned guardsman, paying them no mind at all as it made its way into the driver's seat area. Granger, get that own damn door shut! Janice, get back on those guns! Kalak yelled, turning back to continue using his own weapon as his men heeded him a moment later. Meanwhile, the skull plopped itself down protectively over the input panel, and Farnus, who had frozen in place as this all happened, jumped with a start and lowered his leg back down to the pedals hastily. Sorry, I didn't mean it, he told the skull. It ignored him, settling itself over the panel and locking itself in place with several pincer-like claws. All the while, wires and mechadendrites slithered out from around the neck of the various inputs around the panel and causing its obscured screen to go blank. Farnus jumped for a second time as the engines of the Chimera roared to life beneath him, and his squad gave a beleaguered cheer. He hesitated for...
Called it. I knew it. I knew that servitor was going to R2D2 his way into that Chimera and get it to work for the guys. He did it. Let's keep going.
He hesitated for only a moment before reaching to the lever next to him and jerking it into proper gear, the machine cranking and thunking in response. Omnissiah, forgive me, he said as the Auspex displays blossomed to life around him. But I'm taking credit for that. He stomped on the accelerator and grit his teeth as the already
taking credit for that one.
Forward in a sudden rush, almost kicking from the ground as it tore onto the base's main road. The base in question was a mess of fighting and chaos, but the Imperium was definitely on the defense, and a receding one at that. Farnus felt cold sweat sting his eyes. Where was he even supposed to go?
Turn left at the next intersection,
said the servo skull, speaking in an oddly pleasant, synthesized voice.
Go
Farnus
left.
marveled at the skull before reorienting on the road, hauling the wheel sharply as he came up on the intersection. Left turn it is then, he yelled to his navigator. The Chimera swung, almost tilting up to one side as it made the maneuver, narrowly avoiding 3 chasing missiles from heavier troops who had noticed the APC's frantic escape attempt. 3, but not the 4th. The Chimera was kicked hard enough to nearly topple over itself, skidding across the pavement like an ice hawk disc. For a moment, Farnus feared they would be sent flying over the edge of the platform, doomed to fall for nearly 10 minutes before hitting the lower levels of the hive. But his frantic efforts bore fruit, as the Chimera's tracks finally touched down for long enough to give him traction.
keep right at the next bend,
said the servo skull. That's not going to be easy!
Sir.
Farnus shouted at it as he spun the wheel. Meanwhile, in the back of the Chimera's cabin, Kalak, Janice, and Granger were busy dealing with the new 6-foot gash the rocket had created in their vehicle. The burning APC was already starting to peel sheets of its own armor from the persistent cascade of blaster fire which assailed it. The inside of the cabin becoming swelteringly hot as the hull redistributed the plasmic heat of the enemy weapons. With this latest wound, the clones could now bypass the failing armor completely, and several were attempting just that, lobbing grenades and hails of blaster fire into the breach.
Straight into the opening.
Gala's strafing lines of death kept them from getting too comfortable or accurate. But even so, it was all the other three could do to cluster near the mouth of the breach and fend off their attackers, tossing back grenades and returning fire. Back in the driver's seat, Farnus was crushing the accelerator pedal into the floor of the Chimera, knuckles white on the wheel as he came to gradually realize that, instead of driving out of the besieged base, he was being directed further in.
Make a left turn at the next intersection, and your destination will be directly ahead,
said the skeletal navigator. Burning Throne, you better be sure about this! He yelled as he hauled on the wheel, skidding the Chimera to one side and almost flipping the APC altogether as he made the final bend. Before him, Farnus could see only a distant but rapidly approaching dead end in the form of a massive red wall, the wall of a Mechanicus shrine or temple of some sort. The building had 4 sides, a flat top, and it tapered almost pyramid-like near the top. Upon it was the half-bone, half-mechanical skull that was the symbol of the Church of the Machine God, and all over its pitted red hull were fires and flaws born from the battle raging around them.
Increase speed. You are now on the fastest route to your destination.
What? Wait! You know that we're not trying to die, right? Farnus said, foot still glued to the accelerator.
For the Imperium,
Left.
right?
Maintain course. You are now on the fastest route to your destination.
The young guardsman grit his teeth until he was sure they would crack. His hands were freezing, his guts were dancing in his body, his fear surging in him like a current of weakness which struggled to break him from the inside. His faith flailed against it, but it was proving less and less effective as the temple's walls grew closer and closer. He wanted to close his eyes, but knew doing so would be the same as diverting his path. Can I slow down now?
No.
He yelled.
Negative. Maintain course. You are on the fastest route to your destination.
The wall was swallowing his vision now, so large in his view that he could see little else. Don't close your eyes, he ordered himself. Don't close your eyes! Don't close your eyes! Nerva released a silent howl of pain into the news.
That doesn't sound like good news for Farnus. Sounds like he might be a goner by now.
Sphere, finding herself isolated and alone. She wished she could jump out from her physical body and into the data currents of the new sphere itself to escape the certain death and failure which faced her now. But all she could do was mute the pain receptors in her left arm as the limb, both burnt and seizing from the blue energy bolt which had struck her, continued to convulse, tearing her muscles apart, both the mechanical and the organic. She managed to stay on her feet, spinning to face the clones who had caught up to her in the corridor. 3 of them were charging down towards her, blasting all the while. 2 more blue shots sailed past before she was able to orient her former master's eradication ray gun down the hallway with her remaining arm.
With her master's eradicator ray gun? Have we discussed this at any previous point in time? Because I don't think I've ever seen one of those before. Let's see what happened.
Arm. The shot was imprecise, but it barely needed precision. The satellite dish which served as the nozzle of the weapon erupting in a cascade of orange and red light. The light seemed like any other, save that it reddened the walls where it touched steel, and it shone straight through the clones, first blackening their armor before blowing them away silently like collapsing ash sculptures struck by a persistent breeze. Nerva sighed and sagged under its weight, groaning aloud at the sound of the weapon's warning chime. She had no idea if that was serious or merely the incessant mewling of the gun's grievance.
Guys, what kind of weapon is this? Basically just obliterates your opponent? What? It's like a nuclear bomb. Come on. What is it?
Machine spirit. She hoped, for her sake, that it was the latter. Hefting the gun, and finding that her now numb and useless left arm was finally settling down, its flailing now reduced to errant twitching, she continued her journey into the central bay. It wasn't long before the hallway she was traversing led out into a wide, open area. At a glance, she could see that it had not been spared, flames and damage apparent in the walls and ceiling. But, to her relief, she saw that the ultra-lift platforms used to bring this super heavy vehicles up from the below-ground maintenance shrines were still visibly intact. Less pleasingly, she could also see that the room and lifts had been secured by no less than 8 of the enemy replique soldiers. Nerva firmed her lips, hefting her gun to aim at the clones, even as the two seemed to notice her, signaling in her direction towards the others. This time, she fired first.
She
but
was
instead
ready.
of unleashing another devastating torrent of deadly light, the weapon released another chime. Nerva blinked and pulled the trigger again, eliciting another useless chime. The weapons of her enemies, however, were far less musical and
She's out of battery. Sucks to suck.
far more lethal. She screamed her all-too-human panic into the silence of the noosphere as she tossed the useless weapon aside and dove behind a large block of stacked crates. She briefly considered reconnecting the nerves to her left arm, but dismissed the idea almost instantly. The last thing she needed right now was to be flooded with agony, even if it meant the loss of her arm. Nerva knew she needed her mind much more, and needed it as unclouded as possible to accomplish her goals.
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably not the best idea to reconnect the nerves in her arm, because then she would be in unimaginable pain, and then she probably would not be able to dodge, survive. I don't know. The important things, the real important things. Lose an arm, survive, attach your arm again, possibly die. It's a toss-up, really. Really is.
Those goals currently were mostly about survival, which was proving less and less likely with every passing moment. She had
Yeah.
only a single deployable monoblade left, a 10-inch length which she could protrude from the centermost knuckle of her right hand. She looked at it then, deploying the black steel, almost laughing at how
So, not only does she have just this light gun, just obliterates anything in its path. She's got Wolverine Claw. Of course. What does this lady not have? It even looks like she has Doc Ock octopus arms. She's got it all.
how pathetically inadequate the weapon was for her current situation. And yet, she had not the means to create or produce anything better, and so, with lethal resignation, she began to crouch, preparing to advance. Just then, 3 of the clones appeared, running around her cover and surrounding her, guns out. She felt her whole body become as cold as steel. She didn't even try to rise as the clones began to pull the triggers on their blaster rifles. That was that then. As soon as this new resignation settled over her, it was shattered, along with the wall beside her, with a bone-shattering crash. A chimera, burning and coming apart, burst
That
through the
furnace?
metal wall in a spray of metal and bolt shells, firing even as it careened into the 3 clones who had cornered her. The vehicle swiveled and spun, terminating its erratic journey when it crashed into a partially disassembled Lumen Rust battle tank. The remaining clones reacted quickly, but most of them were not quick enough, the death-spitting turret at the top of the burning vehicle spinning to face them, blowing troopers apart with sustained fire and driving those that remained into the hallways for cover. Nerva felt almost weak, numbing more and more of her emotion and nerve receptors. Now was no time to gawk or even praise her luck, a point that was driven home as several more clones began flying into the building, carried aloft by their jetpacks. These 2 were countered, however, as the back of the Chimera fell open and a squad of 4 Imperial soldiers charged out, one of them bearing an unconscious comrade over one broad shoulder. They opened fire into the breach, striking the clones there and forcing them back. As they did, a familiar skull, Bofin 337, came zipping out after them, heading straight towards her. In an instant, Nerva understood that her salvation had not come from sheer chaotic chance, and, despite herself, allowed a display of human affection as the skull approached her. Smiling in spite of her condition, she wrapped her working arm around the servitor and pulled it close. "Bless you, Bofin! You're a seraph of the machine god himself!" She praised, speaking her thoughts to the skull over their new spheric connection. The device sent back several purrs and chirps of approval, recognizing its task as complete. She had only a moment more before a grizzled, sweating sergeant stomped up to where she was kneeling. He hefted a smoking las rifle, its barrel glowing and stinking of ozone. The man's eyes were bloodshot, and Bofin's auspic scans showed that he had a dangerously low amount of melatonin in his body, though his cortisol levels were abnormally high, even for the situation. The man looked down at her with an unkind grin. "Well, Tech Priest, I'm guessing you called for help."
Alrighty, you guys. So the boys, looks like they survived crashing into the wall. Arnis, we're hoping survived. Hopefully he was the one that was unconscious when they came out. Now, guys, I don't remember this from the previous episode. Was Nerva the one to send Biofin the servitor, to go help Farnus and them? Or what? I don't really remember how that connection occurred. But also, was Nerva also the tech priestess that worked on Lucky number 13 in the previous episode and healed him? Somebody let me know down in the comments if that is accurate or if that was another tech priestess altogether. But guys, with that being said, that's going to be the end of the episode for tonight. If you have any other things you'd like to see us react to, leave them down in the comments for us, you guys, and we'll more than happily check those out for you. But guys, y'all have a great rest of y'all's night. Peace, love, happiness to you. And always, guys, be easy. Love y'all.